Hello, everyone, and welcome to our media video call to introduce the new head coach of the Ontario Reign, John Wroblewski. John, first and foremost, welcome to the organization.
I really appreciate it, Jeff. Thank you.
This is Jeff Moeller of the LA Kings Communications Department, and we appreciate everyone joining us here this morning. Joining us, in addition to myself and John, of course, is Rob Blake, General Manager of the LA Kings and Hockey Hall of Famer, along with Rich Seeley, the General Manager of the Ontario Reign. Thank you both, gentlemen. A note here to the group that we are recording today's media video session for use on the LA Kings website and the Ontario Reign website as well. So just a heads up there. And before we turn it over to questions, and by the way, you ask questions by typing them into the Q&A feature for me to read to each participant. We'll turn it over to each guy here for some opening remarks, starting with Rob Blake. Rob?
Yes, welcome everyone. I just wanted to make sure we extend a welcome to John and welcome him to the Kings organization as head coach of the Ontario Reign. Rich Seeley and Glenn Murray have done an extensive search under the certain situation and that we're in currently right now, a lot of it being virtual, a lot of homework having to be done on many calls. We've been on these calls with John and went through a lot of different things, but we're excited about this opportunity. John's coached a lot of the top prospects over the years, been a head coach in many different leagues and has an extensive background in the coaching. And, we're excited to bring him into the Kings organization, like I said, as head coach of the Ontario Reign. So congratulations, John.
Thank you very much, Rob.
And Rich, if you could please welcome John, obviously, and have some opening remarks yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. First foremost, John, I want to welcome you and your family to the Kings organization. It's an exciting time, as we talked about, and it was a good process, and I thought you handled yourself really well the whole way through. I think one of the points to kind of echo Rob's sentiments is, we discussed internally and really came to appreciate and respect the scope of work that John has, and in the time frame he's done it. He's been an intern and an assistant at the NTDP, an assistant in the ECHL. He's had a lot of success as a head role in the ECHL with the Coach of the Year. He's had some AHL assistant experience, and most recently the head at the NTDP again, also with some international experience there, which I think all of these experiences will really serve him well, and as he leads our AHL coaching staff. So excited to have John be part of the Kings and Reigning organization, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Rich.
Thank you, Rich. And John, we'll turn it over to you for some opening remarks, so to speak.
I really appreciate it, Jeff, and the sentiments there from Rob and Rich. And on behalf of my wife, Ashley, and our young son, Rory, we can't wait to move to Southern California. And I just want to thank everyone involved through the Los Angeles Kings, the Ontario Reign, especially Luke Robitaille, Rob Blake, Glenn Murray, and Nelson Emerson on the development side of things. And I can't say enough about the thoroughness and professionalism displayed by Rich Seeley throughout this entire process. And I can't imagine how much legwork it went into the endeavor to try to make all of this happen on Zoom calls and everything else. And I really appreciate the thoroughness from the organization and the appreciation. It's been nothing but first class thus far.
Great. Well, thanks, guys. And again, John, welcome to Los Angeles. I'll read the first question. It is directed to you, Mr. Seeley. What separated John here from the pack, so to speak, of the applicants and everyone you might have talked to?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things for me that really stuck out for John. Obviously, we talked a little bit about his, kind of a few of the lenses he's been able to accumulate at a relatively young age. I think it's John's ability to be empathetic, but yet stern, have that balance. I liked his attention to detail, and John's very prepared. We had an opportunity to have John present to us, and I thought that was one of the key strengths for him. I expect John will be direct and clear with his expectations, but yet while he'll provide a little bit of leeway for some of our players to be creative, and I think that's that was really important for us. And along with he's been in an environment where he's had some high-end players and some younger athletes come in, and I thought he's done a generally really good job of that. So those are a few of the, of the things that really stuck out for us as we went through this process from, some other applicants.
Rob, obviously a very important hire. Can you talk a little bit about the future of the Kings in the Rain, considering the influx of young talent that's expected in Ontario for the upcoming season?
Yeah, no, and that's a very fair question. There is a lot of prospective young players that will be making their pro debut, whether it's with LA or American League. But I think a lot of it is in this position of leadership and some of the values we wanted out of it. Obviously a leader that is a learner, and I think John's demonstrated that over his career. He's always willing to learn, and I think in that aspect he's going to challenge us also. He's been around the younger kids and star players in the organization that he's been in, and had an ability to coach them in that. We fully understand what we're going to assemble in Ontario, and eventually develop those prospects into the next Kings players.
Great, John. You're being asked just how familiar are you with the collection of young talent that you will most likely have a chance to work with for the upcoming season?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because I have seen a lot of these young men on their rise to being drafted by the Kings, or traded for, acquired. So I do have a pretty broad and widened, scope of how these guys have come along. And, there's, whenever you're reading different publications, it's hard to miss on reading about the Kings prospects. And so, you start doing your research the second that you might be intrigued about the job, or there might be mutual interest. So I've started to acquire quite a bit of information on these guys.
Rich, directed toward you. John's experience both at the AHL level and the ECHL level. How important was that as part of his candidacy?
Yeah, I think a lot of different things came into play, and a culmination of all of those, I think, were key. I think as we talked about, the different lenses intrigued me. Like there's a lot of being an ECHL head coach. There's a lot of great experiences and challenges that John would have undertaken in that role, and a lot of different hats, and really well exceeded that. His teams were both successful, a strong recruiter. I think that would have carried on and shown at the NTDP, but also having that coach of the year at that, and understanding, moving on guys from the ECHL, the American League. And then from there, his progression was being an assistant in the American League. So he's worked under a lot of great people, obviously in the program and his coaching career, but having a different vantage point of the American League would help him continue to form his ideas and his beliefs. And I think that's really valuable, having a little bit of that understanding. Obviously he has a little bit of that with his playing background as well, being, it's nice to see when you're looking at players or staff or leaders and anything that they've shown leadership capabilities in the past, and John has had that with some of his previous playing roles. So I think all those things combined, played a part in having a comfort level and bringing John aboard for sure.
Coach, you're being asked about the types of values that are important to you on the job. What might come to mind when it comes to what's important to you as a coach, both on the ice and off the ice, working with such young athletes?
Well, I think the most important thing that we get from our athletes is their 100% commitment to what they're trying to accomplish, and that's become the best person and player they possibly can be. And through that commitment level, I think it's facilitated by our staff, the entire Kings organization, to build trust level with these guys. And the best way to do that, it's through various methods of communication. And it's been spoken of international experience, and of course my domestic roles here. But really being able to work with a kid one-on-one, work with a young man one-on-one, and be able to gain his trust and communicate on that I care about his future, and make him the best person and player they can possibly be. 100% committed to what he wants to be in life, and And that's what we want here is hockey players. And so that's where we're at.
Another question for the coach. What are you comfortable sharing in terms of, the interview process and obviously, with the announcement today, have you had the opportunity yet to chat with any of the players in the Kings system?
No, that'd be just a little premature. I did get a text message from a former player, and then my phone's been blowing up from a lot of different people. But it'd be a little premature to reach out to the LA Kings players yet, or the Ontario Reign signings. But that's something I'll do in the near future.
I'll just direct this question to the group, whoever feels best answering it. Will both of the assistant coaches will be returning as is?
Yeah, Jeff, I'll touch that one. Yaroslav Modry will not be returning to our staff. Chris Height will be returning, and feel that, John's strengths coupled with Chris Height's strengths will form a well-rounded, strong American League coaching staff. So we're excited about that. And we'll look to kind of round out the coaching staff with another assistant here in the near future.
Rich, logistically, being in a pandemic, the interview process, a lot of Zoom, were you able to meet in person? Can you talk a little bit about maybe the challenges of hiring this position during this unique time?
Yeah, I think it was a good process. It was a group. I think Glenn Murray and myself would have said kind of led part of that and had a lot of communication with Nelson Emerson and Rob and Jeff Solomon for sure on keeping them informed of the process and take a lot of their guidance in place. It was unique that a lot of guys participated in our Zoom calls. It was a group effort in that aspect. It was interesting. I thought it was a really good experience. We wanted to make sure that every candidate was interviewed in the same sort of similar questions and type that help cross-reference with our internal criteria. It was challenging, but it was a good experience. I think some things are tricky to manage with talking about a coach's presence in a room, the way he presents. So we tried to make sure we ticked a lot of different boxes to get a good indication of how we feel about that. But it was slightly different on a video, but it was good. We also, try to bridge those gaps with using our hockey networks to make a lot of, kind of reference calls on interactions that John had with different people throughout the hockey world. And I think, I think the one good thing coming back was that I do feel we have a pretty good read on John's strengths. And so, yeah, it was a unique process, a good one, but same thing. Everybody's facing the same challenges. So I think it was good. We'll continue to move forward.
A question for Rob. A new coach, new system, new talent. How will you evaluate your new coach in Ontario in his first year? Obviously in the minor leagues, wins and losses aren't necessarily as important as development, but how will you evaluate, and maybe what are your goals specifically for him in the upcoming season?
Well, definitely there's a balance between the development and ultimately winning, and we're going to demand both. It's a tough job in that type of position. We understand what we're trying to accomplish with the understanding of putting these young players in situations where they're going to help the team win, but they're also going to grow as a player to be able to step in at the right time. I think a lot of it will be judged on the values that we feel are important for our franchise, and we'll take that as we go. We're going to constantly be meeting and going over different things. As far as systems and things, I'm sure John and Todd McClellan will be on the same page with a lot of the systems going forward, and in what we want to accomplish. There'll be leadway to get creative within that system, and there's some things that are staples that have to be displayed in Ontario that will be displayed in LA. So a lot of that will go in, but I really feel it's a group effort with Rich, with our development staff, with John, with Todd, that we're all on the same page on what we want to accomplish.
Question for John. I'm going to change it a little because it's kind of been asked, but I'll put a little spin on it. Do you have a particular style of coaching, whether that's an offensive-minded coach, a defensive-minded coach? What kind of comes to mind when you're asked about the type of style you generally like to employ?
Well, you want to be an attack team in all facets, and that starts in everything you do. It has everything to do with how you carry yourself as a pro, how you enter the room each day. You were in the weight room, the vibe you give off to the staff. Everything is in attack mode, and so if we're in the defensive zone, we want to be strong, we want to pursue, we want to attack, and of course that leads to transition. And a lot of the teams that I have coached, the calling card does end up with the puck in the back of the net. The teams that I've coached have set quite a few records there at NTDP. We score goals, and we score them in a variety of ways. We'll go to the hard areas, but we'll be thorough and detailed on our line rush too. I'll be starting on our forecheck. We'll be a tough team to play against. And I think maybe the thing that I really hold our club to the utmost importance is to have a team that trusts each other and plays together within that attack mode. So I'm a huge believer in leaning on the guy next to you, having predictability with the guy next to you, so you know that if you're in attack mode, you got somebody backing you up right behind you, and building that trust. And I think that the style that we'll try to play, and the one that I've always tried to implement, is one that allows the players to have fun while they're playing. And that ends up with a lot of hard work, and that ends up with guys making the most of themselves as individuals. And when you breed individual success, I believe that you build the facets of the team, and that leads to team success.
John, the Kings American Hockey League affiliate used to be some 3,000 miles away. Now they're 30 miles away, but also sharing the same complex there in El Segundo. How might that be different than what you're used to, in that you're set up in the same facility as people like Rob and Rich and playing road games in Ontario? What are your initial thoughts on the setup?
Well, it's actually not very different from how I operate right now. It's actually pretty much like home. So as a U18 head coach, what I would do is, we're practicing the same facility as a U17 team. I can watch those kids, on the other side of the rink and in the weight room. I can see how they carry themselves on a day-to-day basis, and so it's very similar to how I've operated since the beginning of my coaching experience. So I'm quite familiar, and I look forward to it. I mean, I've always had great relationships with the other coaches that I've worked with at the NTDP, and so you basically end up having a bit of a melting pot of ideas. You can start bouncing things off of different coaches and different people, even equipment managers and staff. You can start to get little ins and outs on players, and you start to really get a vibe of. I think it's just it's just another feather in our cap of an advantage that we can be on the same page.
Scanning the questions here, John, a couple asking a similar. Can you discuss your interactions with Alex Turcotte during your time there?
Yeah, Alex is I don't want to say an easy player to coach, but he checks every box that you would want as a hockey player. He's number one. You don't get drafted in the top 5 unless you're unbelievably skilled. He's got that, but the tenacity and selflessness and leadership capabilities, and I guess he's to me, he's an inspiring player. Somebody that you want to work with. So I always said that Alex is one of our most valuable players. We had Jack Hughes go number 1, but I always thought Alex was a player that kind of related to everybody could emulate something that Alex did, and he's a true leader that way.
Rob, the relationship between Todd McClellan and John, obviously it's important, but what are some of the types of dynamics that you look forward to seeing the two work together?
Well, I think when you mentioned the setup that we have with both teams being on the same facility in the practice, they cross paths a lot, and the line of communication is good there. Visually, they watch each other's practices and can discuss anything from lineups down to systems, down to what we're trying to accomplish development-wise and wins, losses, and things. So that relationship will build as we go. Unusual circumstance with different types of camps in the summer, not knowing exactly what we'll be able to do, but eventually there'll be a training camp, and John will participate in there with his staff and Todd's staff. So, we fully see the integration there being no issues whatsoever.
John, you're being asked the differences between working with 16 and 17-year-olds compared to the challenge ahead this year in your new position.
Well, it was interesting. I've got to experience this a couple of times, and it's been, an interaction or a kind of a trend in my career where I've got to, view something and then I've got to return to it, or I've gotten to take inventory on a scenario. And I was delightfully surprised when the first time that I jumped from working with 16, 17, 18-year-old young men to the pro ranks, the similarities that you deal with those individuals. And I think that particularly with the NTDP, you really are dealing with a different animal in regard to what's branded in their DNA. You've got some unbelievable kids there. Some are going to go on to play thousands of games in the NHL, and a lot of the kids that don't make it to the NHL are going to end up being unbelievable human beings and doing tremendous things in their lives. And so I found that hockey players carry quite a bit of similarities despite their age differences. What they're looking for somebody that gives them direction. They're looking for predictability, and they're looking for somebody that really cares about them and helps them through their career.
Rob, question for you. A little off topic, but maybe along the lines. Are there any changes coming to the development staff, or does that group remain as is?
I would say as is for now. A lot of things depend on the current situation and pause that we're in once we come out of it, if there's any kind of restructure whatsoever. But, with our development staff that we had here in the past, we'll still be, doing the same types of things that they have been in the past.
John, being asked about Brett Sutter and his role with the team. How that can likely benefit someone like you, new to the club, with a veteran leader like Brett being there, a benefit?
Absolutely, and this aligns. My beliefs align with Ontario and LA in regard to veteran presence, and I've learned this through my experience with Rochester, having some really established leaders there, guys like Drew Bagnall, who what they become is an extension of you. And really someone for the young guys to look up to. So so much of their development isn't the hour and a half that you're dealing with them on the ice or the 15 minutes of an individual video session, but it has to do a lot with professionalism and those guys, their value to the organization and to the development of the young players is invaluable. They're really, really important pieces to the equation. And I value everything that a veteran player can do for us.
We'll hit on the last couple of questions here. A question for Rob. Did you talk to Turcotte about Robo? And if so, what are you willing to share from those conversations?
Probably not going to share too much from those conversations, but no, we did. And actually, we probably discussed it prior to us hiring him when he first turned pro. And he came in at the end of the season, and just his experience with the development program in general.
And a question for Rich and or Rob. Was there anyone in the hockey world, in the hockey community that you maybe reached out to and gave an incredible vote of confidence for John that you'd like to share or not?
On obviously when you do your due diligence and you're doing background checks and that, a former teammate of mine in Colorado, Dan Heino, has spent time with John at the U.S. development program. So obviously a phone call to him, just to make sure we were doing the right things on the background check and the character check and type of coach we were looking for.
Yeah, I can echo those sentiments that Rob mentioned. There's lots of different calls you make through different people, whether it's on a reference on John's resume or people we know that have crossed paths with John. And yeah, there's a couple individuals that spoke to a lot of his strengths, and as I alluded to before in the process, it was a little bit challenging through Teams or Zooms in these interviews, but there was a comfort level that we did feel in speaking with those references and actually maybe even describing what we have from John and our experience that align with some of their interactions with John. So it was good. It was positive that way.
Great, and we'll end here on a little lighter note. John, Southern California, making the move west. You get a tan like myself. What are you and the family looking forward to the most here in the Los Angeles area living here?
Well, I've actually got some of my best friends live in the South Bay area, guys that I went to college with, not hockey players, but I used to live out there in the summers when I was working in Atlanta and in Rochester before I met my wife. So I've got great familiarity with South Bay, but I can't say enough that the intrigue of this job has very little to do with living in Southern California. It's a nice bonus, but the reason that I was ultimately so excited about this opportunity was the responsibility of taking on these players and helping Todd McClellan and the LA Kings realize the potential of these young men and to make the most of it. So that's the big intrigue to this job, and we just can't wait to get going.